So, in true S&O style, can you tell us about your journey and how you chose not to settle for an unfulfilling life?
Yeah, I love it. We're just starting off right into the deep stuff. I'm all about
We don't
it.
mess around here.
We don't.
No. Yeah, I think this topic is so important. I love this question because I feel like in my life, especially right now, I'm in this season where I'm really realizing that settling isn't an option and I'm not okay with being complacent, and I'm ready to kind of rise into my full potential and help other people do the same. So I love that this is coming up right now, and it's, I think, a really global conversation happening right now as well, which is so
Hmm.
important. I know from my personal experience, I kind of felt from a really young age that there were a lot of societal expectations coming in, and just kind of this strict timeline of what my life was supposed to look like that I didn't really agree with. So there was a lot of me kind of grappling with these things that I thought I was supposed to do, this life that I thought I was supposed to lead. And for me personally, that led to this real kind of intense need for control, which then led me into developing an eating disorder, which
Oh,
of course,
wow. Okay.
yeah, I would never, wish that on anyone. It was a tough journey, but it did really lead me to where I am now, and I'm grateful for the lessons I learned through that. So it really brought me to yoga in the first place. While I was in recovery from that, I found yoga, and it was one of those instant gut tug kind of things. I
Yep.
knew immediately this was my thing, this was my calling. And that literally changed my life. So
No, I
ever
can
since,
imagine. Yeah.
right. So ever since I found yoga, that's what I decided I wanted to do. And, at the time that I found yoga, I was in college studying photography. I got my degree in art, not really using it, but that's fine.
Yeah.
And that was really part of me not settling too, was just realizing and accepting that transition of, I studied this for 4 years, I put in the work, and now I'm being called somewhere else, and that's okay. And it's going to be so much more fulfilling if I follow that path. So that's really kind of how I came to where I am now.
And that's really crazy to me that it happened to you at such a young age.
Hmm.
So, and obviously the eating disorder played into it, and I really appreciate you sharing that because that's
Yeah.
obviously a very vulnerable area and not something that's easy to share. So, how were you introduced to yoga?
Hmm.
Or who
Yeah.
introduced you
So,
to it?
good question. I think it's so important to talk vulnerably about things like eating disorders and mental health, especially now we're seeing people developing these mental illnesses earlier and earlier, younger and younger.
Yeah,
So I know that I'm not an exceptional case in any way, that was kind of my path leading to yoga. And that's kind of part of what drives me in the work I do now, for sure, having been through that, and again, not wanting anyone else to have to go through that.
sure.
So while I was in college, I had just come out of treatment for my eating disorder, and now I'm being thrown into this completely new setting where I didn't know anyone, and I went to college out of state, so it was a really new experience for me. And I really, really struggled during my first year of college. My mental health kind of slipped back down the drain, and I didn't really know what to do. So luckily I had really great support systems in place, and I was able to kind of pick myself out of that hole that I had slipped back down into. And right during that time where I was recovering,
Sure. Yep.
I ended up in a yoga class, which was so kind of serendipitous. I was part of an environmental club in college, and that was kind of the first group of people that I felt were my people. And through that organization, we did a little private yoga class just for our group. And the instructor, I'm going to shout her out. Her name is B. Creel. I still, follow her and practice with her and love her so much. But she was my first teacher, and she really kind of opened her arms to me and let me kind of sneak into her yoga classes at 6:30 in the morning. And she really facilitated the first part of my journey through yoga and inspired me to kind of follow in her footsteps and teach yoga and spread, all the healing that I had gained from the practice. So it really was kind of this evolution of ending up in that yoga class with me, getting to take her classes, and then being so obsessed with yoga that it just became my life.
Right. That's just awesome. I just love hearing that.
I love this. Like it's crazy. Like the point that you made before, which I really liked, was the gut tug, I suppose, that you get into yoga and it just felt right. Could you unpack a little bit more? Because I'm really interested in this idea of the universe placing us where we need to be and us manifesting, what we need at that time. And I know obviously manifesting in the universe and a lot of things like that, there'll be people out there thinking, no, I don't want to think that way. But for anyone who's having those doubts, could you kind of talk about that a little bit more?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm very into manifesting and working with the energy of the universe. And of course, at that time when I found yoga, I had no idea that any of that existed. I didn't know what mindfulness was. I didn't know any of this world of spirituality. So to me, it was kind of a huge shock when I felt that gut tug. I was just kind of in the class doing these asana and not really knowing what I was doing, but I felt confident with it because I'm able-bodied and whatnot. So I was just kind of doing the things. And all of a sudden, there was just this overwhelming sense of peace that came over me, and almost like a voice in my head saying, you need to do this. And
Yep. I'm laughing because I've heard that voice before. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
And those are such magic moments too, when you get that kind of hit of your intuition coming out and really kind of screaming in your face like, hey, you found it. This is it.
Right.
Yeah. And for me too, it was going to more of these classes and just getting deeper into the practice of yoga. I so immediately felt that it was more than just this physical activity that I was doing. It really, the healing it gave me right off the bat was so intense in the best way. And I knew if a practice like yoga, which at that time too, it was like the surface level of what yoga is, I've learned so much since then, but even just that kind of entry level to yoga, there was so much healing happening for me. And that gut tug was saying, you can't be selfish and keep this to yourself. You have to share this. You have to share this with people. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
It did. And I think that's just such a great story already. I mean,
I know. It's like, I just love this.
I was like, wow.
I feel like we all three of us have had that exact same moment happen to us in different ways. So it's just always fun when you run across someone else who's had the same experience. So.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, what a great first guest. Thank you. But I think to your point as well, vulnerability is hugely important. I think for anyone who hasn't heard of Charlie Howard, she was a model who had an eating disorder, and she really struggled because of the expectations in the modeling community of you've got to be this size, and she was already at that time very, very small. Yet this modeling agency booted her because of the fact that she was, not in line with what they wanted. And she put a really vulnerable post about modeling and now runs this company called Squish, all just basically breaking apart those kind of unrealistic expectations. So I think to hear you talking about eating disorders, it's just adding to that narrative that needs to be said, I think.
Thank you. That really does mean a lot. I mean, I think it just comes to this story of whoever told us that we had to look a certain way, and, how dare someone else tell me how I'm allowed to live in my body? I think that's really what it comes down to is this is my vessel. If I feel good, that's what matters. If I don't look like you want me to look, that's not really my problem. So yeah, I so appreciate that more voices are coming up in this work, and we're really starting to end the stigma around mental health. That's a huge thing.
Yes, love it.